Hello and welcome to Introduction to Excel, part 1 of a course from York St John University Digital Training. To get the course materials, you might find them adjacent to this video. If you're a York St John student, you can go onto Moodle, go to the student menu, go to Digital Training, select Digital Training Courses at the bottom on the left, select Excel Courses, and this is course number 1. Double click it, download the file, and open up the file from your downloads. We're going to have a look at a wide variety of basic things about Excel to provide a basis for later learning. The first tab here shows you all the things we're going to look at. The tabs are colour coded, sometimes there's several tabs for each section. We need to enable editing at the top in order to interact. To give you an example of how this is going to work, each of these tabs has an activity that I will demonstrate. I'll then give a couple of seconds for you to pause the video, swap over to your own copy of Excel and try them out. You'll notice on all the sheets that we're going to have, there are some yellow numbers. These tend to be the order we're going to look at things in on the sheet. Linked to those on the right hand side, there may be some further help or reminders of what we've just talked about. The screen will look like this when it's a good time to pause and try out the thing I've just shown you. Let's start with an introduction. I'm on the green tab A, Introduction. Notice I'm using downloaded Excel here. Excel does have a version that runs inside an internet browser. Most of the things we do on this course will be doable in either scenario, but I'm going to use the downloaded version as it just opens up all the menus and makes things slightly easier. What is a spreadsheet? Well, spreadsheets have been around for an awful long time, mainly for accounting purposes. The whole point is a grid, and the grid in the case of Excel is labelled with letters across the top, going A to Z, and then going AA, AB, and so on, and then numbers going down the left-hand side. This means that every single cell has got an address. So this blue box here is K8. This red box here is F16. Have a think about what this box is. Well, hopefully you've decided that this box is C26. With that knowledge in mind, let's get on with some more Excel features. On to sheet B1. Cell contents. How do we put things into a box? If you want to type a number, 23, click in the box, type 23. Now you've got some choices here. You can tick the little tick box at the top here. That counts as enter. You can press the enter key, you might call it return, on your keyboard, normally the large one with an arrow on the right hand side of the keyboard. That will take the cell down to the next selection down. If you've typed in a number and you want to go to the right, you can press tab, which is to the left of the Q key on your keyboard. And lastly, people will sometimes type a number and then click in another cell. We'll see later on this is a bad habit to get into, so I'm suggesting you don't do that last one. So what are the different things that can go into a cell? There's only 3 possible things. You can have numbers, you can have words, whole sentences, or you can have formulae. If I double click on this one here, you can see I've got equals 2 plus 2. We'll come on to formulae later. And as an alternative version of a formula, you can have formulae that use words and brackets. Okay, they basically count as the same thing. Those are all the possible things you can have. To see what's in a cell, if you click on it, you can see at the top of the screen here in the formula bar, or if you double click, you can see within the cell what's there. We're on sheet B2 now. So there's two aspects to each cell on an Excel spreadsheet. It has some contents, such as a number, and an appearance. Now the appearance might be the colour of the writing, the colour of the background, bold, different fonts, lots of things to play with up here on the menu bar, on the home menu, that I'm sure you're probably fairly familiar with or can work out already. The other aspect to Excel numbers, however, is things like the pound sign or displaying a date instead of a number. Now these are all set on the number part of the menu, and any given number can be represented in lots of ways. If I take my 47 on the left here, if I click on the accountancy symbol, I get a pound sign put on. It's not actually in the cell, it's just being put on at the point of displaying it. If I go on the drop down menu, there are lots of possibilities here. So I could display this as a short date, and dates are counted from the 1st of January 1900, so hence 16th of February 1900 is the number 47. They're the same thing, and this allows Excel to do calculations. If I look down here where I've got 49.000, the number of decimal places can be set, and there are lots more ways of displaying a given number, and if you go into more number formats, you've got even more to choose from with lots more options. Have a look at those now. When you've got cells set up the way you want to see them, maybe I've got this lovely bright red 43 with a blue background, and maybe I'm going to add pound sign onto that to display it as currency. If I want to transfer the look of that to some other cells, I could do the same again. Much quicker though is to use the format painter up in the top left hand corner on the home menu here. If I click on a source cell, click on the format painter and touch another cell, it's going to keep its own number. You can see that they've got different numbers in, but it's going to have the look and feel of that cell. All of these fonts, all of these custom number settings. Now if I wanted to do that to a lot of cells, if I double click the format painter, I can paint over cells and keep going until I get bored of it and I want to stop. And then I'll turn it off on the menu bar and it will stop doing that. So you can see you can take a format that you like and spread it around. Same applies if it's not a format. So the kind of anything is a format. So if I take this very ordinary looking cell here, turn on the format painter and paint over all these cells, they're just going to turn back to their ordinary numbers that they started out as. Have a try of that. Okay, clearing cells. Now there's different aspects to clearing cells in the same way that there's different aspects to the contents of cells. I've got some cells with numbers in here. If I highlight one of them and I go on clear, which is on the right hand side of the menu over here, if I clear all, it's going to take it back to being a blank cell with nothing in it. If I pick another one here and I clear the format, it's going to take it back to being a cell that is the same number in it that was there before, but it's actually got no formatting applied to it, no fonts, just the standard font for the page. If I take a cell and clear the contents, I've taken the number out, but it's remembered the way it looks. So as soon as another number is typed in there, it's going to go back to the way it looked before. Have a go with that. Okay, we're on to sheet C1, sheet management. So all of the things that can go in cells, we've seen words, numbers. Occasionally you might see some slightly different effects happening. This text is allowed to overflow because there's nothing next to it in the cell next to it. If I put something in the cell next to it, that will stop it overflowing because it would be wiping out the thing that was there. If a number fits, that's great. If a number can't fit in a cell, it won't be displayed. Now, if it's a decimal, it will round it. Excel will round it and just make it the nearest decimal it can. However, if it's a number that isn't truncatable, you're going to have to change the size of the columns or the rows in order to accommodate that. So here, if I hover my mouse between A and B at the top of the screen, the cursor changes to this line with two arrows on. If I hold my mouse down and drag to the right, that gives enough room now to display that number without cutting any of it off, and it's happy to do so now. You can do the same for rows. If I go between 2 and 3 here and drag down, I can have a taller box. You can highlight several columns together. If I click and hold on the A, run across to the B and the C and let go, I've selected those whole columns. If I change one of them, they all change, and because they're all selected, they all get the same width applied to them. And lastly, if I double click a column heading between the A and the B here, it'll look down column A, find out how wide it needs to be to accommodate the widest thing in the column, which is the words here, and make the column that wide. Now sometimes you want to add extra columns in or get rid of them. There are lots of ways to do that. If you highlight a column, up on the menu at the top right here on the home menu, we can go insert sheet columns, and they'll always go to the left of where you were. So what was column B has been moved across to C and so on, and there's an empty column in there. Same with delete. If you've highlighted a column, you can delete the sheet columns, and that will get rid of it and any contents down there. Same with rows. If you highlight a row, it'll say insert sheet rows instead. If you right click on any given cell and go insert, it'll pop up a menu asking you what to do, because it's not entirely sure if you mean rows or columns, and it's up to you then. If you want to insert individual cells, if I click on this cell here, the word 4, if I go insert cells, it'll still ask me, do you want to budge them across, or do you want to budge them down to make a space? So if I say insert cells down, it's made a new space there and pushed all the other cells down. Similarly with deleting. On to sheet C2. A few more things about making things look the way you want them. Wrapping text. So here you can see from the formula bar at the top there's lots more text that we're not seeing because of the other cells around it. Sometimes you want to see that. You could make the column very wide, but that's not always convenient. However, if we click on that cell, and you can do this to a whole column or a whole bunch of cells at once, but I'm just going to do that one cell. Wrap text on the home menu shows you all the text, and it's made the row deliberately deeper in order to fit that in. Other things that are up on the alignment menu up here, if I click on this cell A5 and I go on the angle or the vertical text, it will make that in a different direction. Sometimes that's quite useful to get thin headers at the top of a load of data. In terms of position within a cell, if I've got this cell, blue cell here, I can use the top set of controls up here to make it go top, middle or bottom. I can use left, middle or right, and combinations, so I can go middle and middle, and it'll be in the middle there all round. Getting away from individual cells to the whole sheet, down the bottom we've got a tab. If I double click on that, I can give the tab a new name. and then just either press enter or click away after that. If I right click that tab, I can go tab color and give the tab a different color. And you'll see that best when you're on a different tab. It'll stand out more. Okay, we're on to sheet D1, talking about copying. So to copy in Excel, you can use copy on the home menu. There's a shortcut, which is holding down Control and pressing C on a Windows PC, or Command and C on a Mac. Once you've copied, you can highlight a bunch of cells by pressing and holding and letting go when you got to the end, and going paste. Another way of copying over here is to get on the very bottom corner of a cell, so you can see the slightly raised dot in the corner. If you hold the mouse down over that and drag down, that will copy a cell. Now that's just done a straight copy of the number 1 all the way down that cell. You'll notice when you get to the bottom and let go, there's a little extra menu appears that says autofill options. If you go in there, you can change from copy cells to fill series, and that's taken that original number and just counted up from there. These don't just work vertically, you can also drag the bobble horizontally, and again you have the little menu if you wanted to get a series rather than an individual cell. Go on to D2, a bit more copying. If I click on a cell that's got a recognisable feature such as Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, days of the week, months of the year, if I get on the bobble there, the default will be to make a series, but you can still go on the menu at the bottom and change that back to copy if you wanted a lot of Mondays. It will recognise things like Jan and count through the months of the year. And again, these work horizontally just the same. And if you start off with a full month, it'll give you the full month names. If you have abbreviations, that's what it'll work with. Now you don't just have to work with individual cells when you're copying. If you highlight 2 cells, so I press and held on the 5, move down to the 10 and then let go of everything. Now if I get that bobble and drag down, Excel will spot the pattern 5 to 10 and carry on counting in 5s. If I do the same over here, so press and hold on the 3, drag down to the 6, let go of everything, grab the bobble and drag down, it's not only spotted the pattern counting in 3s, it's also spotted the formatting pattern and tried to copy that down as well. Now if instead of copying cells you want to move them, slightly different. If I want to move an individual cell, I need to click on it first. I need to get on any part of the edge but not the bobble. If I drag the bobble, that's going to copy the cell. If I go somewhere else on the edge, I get the 4-way cross, press and hold, and I can drag and drop that cell there. For a set of cells, I can highlight the 3 cells, let go of everything, and again, not on the bobble, somewhere else on the edge, press and hold, drag and let go, and that group of cells will go to a new location. On to tab E now. Just want to talk a little bit about saving in OneDrive. At the moment, I've downloaded this Excel spreadsheet into my downloads on my machine. It's just in there. It's not really a very good place for it to be in a more permanent basis. So as soon as you start working with an Excel sheet, you should save it. And the ideal place to save it is into your OneDrive. If you're a York St John University student, you have full access to OneDrive for Business. We'll go in the File menu, we'll go Save As, we'll select OneDrive, University York St John. You might want to put it inside a folder. If I double click that, up will pop a box. I can give it a sensible name, save that in there. Now it might not seem a big difference to save it in your OneDrive rather than on your computer, but this is going to do several things. This will turn on autosave, meaning that everything's saved as it happens. It will also turn on a history, which means that the file can be taken back to a previous point, maybe yesterday, maybe a week ago. And it also means that the file can be accessed from anywhere, including in Excel Online. We'll go on to sheet F1 and have a look at some basic calculations. On the right hand side here are basically the answers. That's where we're going to get to. But let's make that ourselves. Here's some simple columns of the fruit name, the cost for each fruit, the quantity we've got, and we want to work out a subtotal. Above them, we've got some column names. This is a really good idea in Excel, and we'll see later on about Excel tables that require column headings. To do a calculation in Excel, I'm going to click on this brown cell here. Every calculation starts with an equals. So I'm going to start with an equals. And I want to multiply the cost of grapes by the quantity of grapes. So if I click on the cost, Excel has written B3 in there, which is the address of that cell. And that's important because you're not saying multiply £1.50 by something. You're saying look in this box and see what's there right now, and that might change in the future. We want to do a multiplication. Excel uses the star symbol for multiplication. That's on the Shift and 8 key on your keyboard. And just while we're noting that, a divide is a slash, which is on the same key as the question mark symbol. But here we've got a star for multiply, so whatever's in B3 multiplied by, and I'm going to click on where the quantity is, C3. Now I could have typed the B's and C's, B3 and C3. You can type that on the keyboard, you can click on the cell. It makes no practical difference as long as you get to the right thing in the end. Key things being the equals at the start, the correct cell addresses, and then in this case multiply in between. Now to finish typing that, I need to say I've finished. I can click on that tick, I can press enter or tab on the keyboard. What I mustn't do is click on a cell somewhere else. You'll see at the moment the last figure says C3. If I click somewhere else, that's going to be updated to the last thing I've clicked on, which is the wrong cell for the calculation. So click on the right cells, and I would suggest pressing enter on the keyboard. That's done the calculation, and the whole point of this is it's looking at live data. So if I click on that 3 there and change that to a 7 for 7 bunches of grapes, as soon as I update that cell by pressing enter, you'll notice the subtotals updated. It's always looking at the live quantities and costs that are in those columns there. And that's the whole point of Excel, that it updates itself every time any single cell is changed and can keep the calculations right up to date. Now we want to do the same on the next row down and the next row down, bananas, pineapples, etc. We could make the cell calculation again manually. As you might imagine, there's better ways of doing that. The first better way of doing that is to actually copy and paste. Now this is a part of Excel where copy and paste don't actually work as copy and paste. If I copy that cell and I click on the cell below and paste, I get what looks to be the right answer, 22 times 10, that sounds right. But if you notice, where the cell said B3 times C3 before, it now says B4 times C4. It's doing a different calculation. So it hasn't done a strict copy and paste, it's done a translation. Now actually that's what we want. We want to work out the cost of grapes on the top row, the cost of bananas on the second row, and so on and so forth. So Excel's kind of doing what we would like it to do, but it's not strictly a copy and paste, and that can have effects in certain places. So we can actually copy that cell and we can highlight it, the rest of that column, and paste, and then that will copy that cell all the way down there. Okay, I'm going to move on to sheet F2. Now I've got where I am so far, I've added another couple of columns in and moved things across a bit. I now want to add delivery onto that. So again, rather than calculating the whole thing from scratch, we've already got a subtotal. We want to simply add on using plus to add on the delivery. So again, it's a very simple formula, equals, and again you can type or click on these, D3 plus, which is on the same key as equals, delivery, which is in the E3 cell, and press enter. Now to copy that cell down, I could do copy and paste like I did before, or I can actually grab hold of this bobble here and just drag it down. That does the same equivalent of copy and paste. Moving on to the last of our calculation sheets, F3. The other sort of calculation you can do is called a range calculation. So instead of for each of these individual rows calculating just something for that row, we might want to, in the grand total space here, add up all the totals for all the rows. Now I guess we could do equals F3 plus F4 plus F5 plus F6, but there's a shortcut to that. If I click in the cell for the grand total, I'm going to use the auto sum function at the top right here. Click that. Now that's written in equals sum, S-U-M, open bracket, which is on the Shift and 9 key if you were typing it. It's put in two cell references with a colon between, and those basically mean everything from F3 to F10, and then close the bracket, and Excel's quite fussy about closing any brackets you've opened. Now actually I don't want F3 to F10 because it's got that extra line in it. I want to try and make sure I'm particularly accurate, so I'm going to hold the mouse down on the first one, drag, and then not let go until I get to F9, and then let go, and you can see it's updated the formula down there. Again, if I press enter, that has added up all the bits between F3 and F9. And all of this is dynamic, so anything I change on this spreadsheet, if I change how many pineapples I've got 23 pineapples, press enter, the subtotal's updated, the delivery total's updated, and the grand total's updated. So the whole sheet is recalculated every time any single cell changes. Just to have another look at that, very similar thing, I'm going to find the average sale. Up on the auto sum button towards the right hand side of it, there's a little drop down. You can select average. You can also see things like min and max, but I'm going to go for average. Let's type the word average in, and again I'm going to adjust the range. I can do this by typing instead. I can just amend this up on the formula bar there to get the right range in there, and again press enter when I'm ready. Now a lot of Excel is not about doing calculations, it's about managing data that's in sheets. So this might be a very typical sheet, a bit complicated, But here we've got some headers at the top, things like name and department and colours they've chosen and so on. And then each row is the record for an individual person. It's a very typical Excel sheet. Now there's a couple of things that can make this hard to deal with. If I scroll the sheet, the titles have gone off the top. If I scroll to the right, the names have gone off the left. It makes it very hard to deal with. However, you can freeze titles, and what I mean by that, let me show you. If I go on the View menu and into Freeze Panes, I can freeze the top row. And then when I scroll down, that top row with all the titles on the column headers stays exactly where they're put. That's really handy. However, if I'm just freezing the top row, that's not good enough. It doesn't hold the names there. So there's a better way of doing it maybe. If I go on the freeze panes and unfreeze, just to get things back to everything flowing, I'm going to click on this brown square here, and I'm going to use freeze panes and freeze panes. And what this does, it's going to keep everything to the left of where I am stationary. It's going to keep any rows above stationary, and then let the rest move. So if I turn that on, as I go down, you can see the top row stays put. As I go right, you can see the first 3 columns stay put. So you can always see the person's name and department. And that's quite a typical use and quite a good thing to do when you get a spreadsheet that's got a big range of data like this. Find a place and freeze the panes. Unfreeze is the opposite of that, to free everything up again. And then setting a print area. Now you might think I'm not going to print things out these days, we're in the modern times, but the print area is also the area for making PDFs. So on the page layout menu there's lots of tools which will affect if you send things to a printer for paper, to print on paper, but will also affect how you make a PDF. The most important of these is print area. If I was sending this to somebody else and I only wanted to send some of the data, if I highlight that data that I am happy to send them, set the print area by going on the page layout menu, print area, and set print area. When I print, that's the only bit they're going to get, and when I make a PDF, that's the only bit they're going to get. So data security is quite important. Maybe on another tab you've got the wages bill, maybe some of this other data is confidential. By setting the print area, if I go into File and Print, you get a preview of what you're going to get. You can see the only data being printed to either paper or to a PDF is the actual data I highlighted there. Back we go. If you have got lots and lots of data, so if I cancel my print area and I want to print everything, you've got some tools to play with. Just briefly, you can change the orientation to make things print out sideways on paper or again on PDF. You can make narrow margins. If you've got a printer that's A3 capable, you can select an A3 and the more paper sizes. If you want to govern how things print out, you can say only use 1 page wide by 1 page deep and everything will go on 1 page. I think that might turn out a bit small here, so maybe I might go 2 pages by 2 pages. And you can try that out. You can come on the print preview, get a bit of a feeling. That looks like it might be readable actually. If I print it out 2 pages by 2 pages, I'll only use 4 pieces of paper, and that seems quite reasonable for the data I've got. And the last thing we're going to look at very briefly is a modern Excel tool called tables. Now, when you've got data like this, very similar to data we've seen before, we've got a row of headers, and each row below is a different person's record. When you get given this, or you've typed it out, or you've copied and pasted it, however you've got it, the first thing you should do is to click somewhere within the data. You've got to be within the data. Go on the Home menu, go Format as Table, pick a colour, and the colour makes no difference in terms of the way things operate. Excel will find the edges of the data. It's generally very good at that as long as you would started off from within it. It's saying my table has headers, which it does. This top row are the headers. Say OK. And that has put the data into an official Excel table. Now this means it's not possible for you to mess your data up. You can't accidentally sort the names without it also sorting the corresponding departments and colours and fruits. It'll keep each of these lines intact as you sort them and use them. So it's a really powerful tool. If you look out for our Excel 2 course, that takes you more into tables and we'll tell you a lot more about them. A couple of things with tables, just really briefly. You can click on any of the triangles at the top and you can sort. So if I want to sort by name, I'm sorted by name. If I want to sort by contact date, I can sort in that column. If I want to sort by score, I can sort in that column, and so on and so forth. As an alternative to sort, you might sift or filter. If I go in the colour column down the bottom here, I could turn off everything apart from green and orange. And that's hidden all the other rows, and all of these ones are green and orange. And maybe in the fruit column I'll turn off everything apart from kiwis and bananas. And we've gone from having a lot of rows being displayed to only the people who chose green and orange and either kiwi or banana. If we went one step further and picked a department, turn off the ticks for all of them, we'll have the finance department. This is quite often the answer to a question you're looking at. Someone's asked you who in the finance department likes oranges, likes the colour orange, and kiwis and bananas. Now you'll notice on the left here, lots of numbers are missing. Those rows aren't deleted, they're just hidden. To get them back, you could go in the individual menus or on the home menu. On the right hand side, there's a master filter, and the clear there takes you back to seeing all your data. I hope you found this useful as an introduction to Excel. We have courses that build on this, taking you into tables and managing data, looking at some formulae, having a look at pivot tables for summarising data, and then a final course looking at more formulae. If you're interested in really proving your Excel skills, you can also undertake MOS exams, Microsoft Office Specialist exams. There are separate exams in Excel and Word and PowerPoint, as well as our courses supporting the contents for those exams. You can also do self-study and exam practice on some software we can supply. Email Digital Training if you're interested in learning more about Microsoft Office Specialist exams.
More help is available from Digital Training. Send us an email, book a tutorial session, or see the help pages on our website.